The Wisdom Counselors Learning Institute is a hybrid incubator that provides technical assistance for startups owned by BIPOC entrepreneurs in pursuit of generational wealth. What do you think are some of the top challenges that BIPOC entrepreneurs face as they're building these businesses?
Support systems. I think finances and knowledge. But then when you talk to people who are not BIPOC, guess what they're using?
Yeah.
They're leveraging those resources.
A lot of people say they have a business, but it hasn't made money in 3 years.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. A skill set with the product. And so that's where creativity would come in to be able to pivot. What you do is, what is your problem? Like getting enough clients. I need to build more clients. And so let's say it's a coffee shop and they're like, we're losing money. We opened up and there's these huge giants around. You literally take that random starting point. And if this works, if you're in like maybe you get a group of friends or a cohort or friend tours, mentors together.
I like that a lot. I think that it's important to sort of, evaluate. You can evaluate what is working, what isn't working, and then how do you then look to transfer those skills, just like you would for a job, right?
Absolutely.
How do you transfer
Absolutely.
the skills to then get paid in order to fund that back into your business? So welcome everyone to another WCLI Roundtable, CEO Roundtable. So the Wisdom Counselors Learning Institute is a hybrid incubator that provides technical assistance for startups owned by BIPOC entrepreneurs in pursuit of generational wealth. My name is Jessie Santana. My pronouns are she, her. I'm an organizational culture strategist and inclusive leadership coach. I empower advocate leaders to co-create brave spaces of intentional inclusivity and fierce belonging to increase engagement for innovative teams. And here today, I have Cherron Castillo, and who's the owner and principal facilitator of Fruitful Training Group. And they're going to be talking to us today about business, ownership, entrepreneurship journeys, and of course, pivoting into this new year. So welcome, Cherron. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Jessie. Thank you so much. Hello out there. Welcome. Thanks for allowing me to be here. So Cherron Castillo is my name. As Jessie mentioned, I'm owner and principal facilitator for Fruitful Training Group. I am a mom. I'm a wife. I've got two only children because I've got a 23-year-old and a 9-year-old. So I have a son who was an only child for about 14 years. And now I have a 9-year-old at home. And then we have a dog. I wear several hats like we all do, right? So my background, if I go with education and work though, so HR, retail management. So I've done a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I've done and worked in education, and then finally landed here. Although it's been a thread throughout all of the things, where I am now is at that intersection. And I heard this said once, this intersection of where what I like doing intersects with what I'm good at doing and intersects with where there are opportunities to do it. So at that intersection is where you find me and Fruitful Training Group. We're good at it, we like it, and there's opportunities out there for it to happen. And so as I mentioned though, teaching and education have kind of been a part of what I've done, whether it was in HR or retail management, officially in education in K-12 schools. And then made the decision, hey, I want to start my own. Do I? So that's kind of where we are. And I've found myself here recently with the little evil, hands in the pyramid kind of, am I building an empire right now? I think I am. So that's working day and night. In the words of, I think that was a Michael Jackson song. So that's me. Hopefully I gave enough snippets of the different parts, and of course we'll get into a little bit more, right?
Of course. And so thank you so much for being here, Cherron. And being that you have so many, parts and you're wearing so many hats, to build this empire. What do you think are some of the top challenges that BIPOC entrepreneurs face as they're building these businesses?
Challenges we face. I would say if I kind of list them out first, I think support systems. I think finances and knowledge. I
Mm,
think those are the challenges. And so when I say support, when anybody is starting anything, one of the things I believe is, what's in your hand, right? To start with what's in your hand, but then who's around me. So that support in the way of networks, but then also family. And so I think a challenge is if I haven't seen anybody do it, or sometimes, for BIPOC entrepreneurs or startups, if who in my family has done this before, or who around me in proximity has done this, who can support me, who could be that mentor, the person I can call to ask questions. And if the answer to that is nobody, then therein lies the challenge, right? So, and figuring that out, or kind of getting into rooms and networking, is something I would encourage with that. Just kind of showing up and doing that, where you're training yourself if you need to, or picking yourself up or encouraging yourself. I think the other part of support, is if the people around us haven't done it, they don't necessarily see the vision in it either, right? So then it kind of turns into, I'm calling up, if I'm talking to friends or family and they're like, oh, okay, that's cute, you got your little business. Sometimes that is the kind of energy that comes back, depends on who it is. And of course, those people love you, right? They're close to you, but it's not something they've done themselves, right? So it's not anything that where there can be necessarily advice, or I've been there, done that. And then sometimes I think in the way of support, what many people may experience is if the people around me haven't done it, don't know how to do it, and they're like, okay, you go, then trying to figure out who's going with me, right?
mm,
Or who am I connecting with? I saw a post on LinkedIn where, and I can't remember whom to give credit to. I just know that this is not my own, but they referred to someone as a friend tour, like combining friend and mentor, right? And so, but it was through somebody they met through networking, right? And that person became a friend, and then also a mentor where, hey, this friend is the person that I bounce things off of. So I've been grateful to, encounter people like that, to where that is kind of helping with the support. But I think that turns into an issue. I think the finances, but it still connects to that first one again, where there is I'll say a different advantage versus a disadvantage. Yeah, let's go with that.
mm,
Different advantage is that finance situation, because again, there's not the family who's like, how much money do you need to get this started, Jesse? Okay, I'm I'm gonna plant a seed. I'm gonna give you this loan. I'm going to reach into,
mhm,
my wealth and bless you. And there's a lot of people, unfortunately in our community, or, BIPOC, that ain't it. So there's not, and so it's figuring out, how do I get the finances? But then that turns into, again, if I connect that back to the support, who do I know that I can talk to about business plans, about how to present myself in a way so I can go get money, from someone
mhm,
else? Because there's truly nothing wrong with the OPM. Maybe you've heard of OPP, Jesse, right? Other people's property. And then OPM, right, is other people's money. And so I think, as again, if that second challenge is finances, the mindset around finances, I think, becomes a barrier or an issue, because me, and you can tell me for you, but I'm raised, it was just my mom. My dad was around, but it was my mom, my sister, and I. But the story and the belief was, you don't do credit. We don't borrow money. We're not taking out loans. You're not gonna mess your credit up. So it was that kind of energy, and so now there's this stigma around using other people's money. But then
mhm.
when you talk to people who are not BIPOC, guess what they're using?
Yeah.
Other people's money. They are using, they're leveraging those resources, because if I can take this If you give me $100, Jesse, I flip it and make 300, then guess what? I've got enough to cover to give you your 100 back. Plus I've made some money in my pocket, right? And so,
Mhm.
and I didn't have to come out of my own pocket to begin with, right? But most of us, or people that I've talked to, when I say us, it's people in the communities that I've been around that are people of color, like, I just have to do it on my own. And so then we stay trying to get it figured out, and we don't have the money. And then the third thing I think is the knowledge that even applies to all those other two, right? So where's the support? Where are the finances? And then, do I even know what I'm doing? No. Do I? And who do I talk to? What do I learn? Where do I go? And so I think, again, that motivation, I think that would come with all of that to go get it figured out, I think is really important. So those are challenges that I would say. I'll summarize, because in teacher fashion, it's what I do, right? We need support, so building support systems, going after finances, or first, if I'm managing our own better, right? And then
Mhm.
looking for how do we connect with OPM, other people's money. But of course, we need people to trust us, so we have to have our stuff together for that. So the knowledge of how to do those things, that third part, the knowledge, is really important too. And so I always say, if all else fails, then attending things like this, roundtables, to get encouragement, insight. If it's Googling and looking for anything that's free 99, if it's finding all kinds of resources and kind of just getting in rooms. And so for me, a word with that to help me with support, to help me with finances, and to help me with knowledge, the word that I've adopted here recently, and recently within the last couple of years, is the word action. And not just the word, but the doing. And so go. Look it up. Something's online, going to Eventbrite or Meetup, or what's on LinkedIn, showing up to the class, not just registering for it and forgetting, right? So putting it on my
Yeah.
calendar, showing up to the class, getting in the room where people are listening, asking questions, coming from a position of curious. And so I think that's been really beneficial for me. I'm just going to take action. And this is the last thing I'll say, because I've been monologuing, Jesse. You got me out here monologuing.
Well,
Um,
go ahead. Finish what you're gonna say
um,
before I say something.
is dang it! It jumped out when I said I was monologuing. Maybe it'll come back. So you get to take a turn now, Jesse.
I resonated with everything that you're saying because I recently had a conversation with a family member who said, you don't want to owe anybody anything. And if you can't, fulfill that which you owe, then it's going to look bad on you as a person,
Mm-hmm,
and your honor, your dignity, your morality.
mm-hmm,
And instead of looking at it as, this support system that we're by being able to create and be a part of these businesses, we're not just helping ourselves, but we're helping others in the process as well.
mm-hmm,
And so I definitely find that to be a constant conversation, especially when you're having people who don't necessarily, they're very comfortable with the direct deposit, or they
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
see it as a risky venture. Maybe
Oh, yeah.
they've tried previously in the past and it didn't work. And so they feel like, why put yourself up for that heartache?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And also just, making sure, like you said, making sure that our finances are in order so that we can have access to those resources. I don't think there's ever enough financial literacy in our
mm-hmm.
community that we've had access to it. Now with social media, everybody's talking about it, but it's
Yep,
definitely not something that I paid
yep,
attention to when I was in
yep,
my youth.
yep.
So it's definitely
Absolutely.
something, all of those things, all of those things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Something you said just made me think about mindset, I guess, in general, right? Our mindset, the mindset of who's around us, right? And how they say your network is what determines your net worth. And,
Mm-hmm.
and so, who am I interacting with? Who are those 5 people that have the most influence with me, whether it's business or personal relationships or all of the things? And it's like, how am I growing? And well, let me take a look at where have they gone. So, and for all of us to evaluate it, if I had to get, who are my top 5? What have they done? What is their mindset? like you mentioned, so if the first thought is, oh, what if you can't pay it back? So versus, oh my gosh, that's going to be amazing how you're going to, increase and bring increase and help the family or the community. And so we have to be really careful about what we are putting into ourselves and then allowing to be deposited into us in that regard, as far as mindset. And so for me, I was saying that here recently, the affirmations, and it's something I've been having my daughter to do, like even this morning on the way to school, to listen to. And she and I were having a conversation. So Jesse, you and I were talking before this started about our kids and their love or lack thereof for school. And so I was talking with my daughter about mindset and about positivity, and because so I'm a person of faith, right? And I know everybody has, different things, what they do or don't believe. And so for me as a person of faith, um, my daughter and I are praying on the way to school, and she's praying, oh, I hope they don't talk too much. I hope the kids don't disrespect the teacher. And I was like, so what do you want the day to look like? I want them to stop, ... And so what I did in that moment is I asked her to pause, and I was like, okay, I want you to not tell me what you don't want to happen. I want you to tell me what you do want to happen. Mm-hmm. Because I heard someone say it like, either way, if you're speaking or saying things, right, you are maybe helping to create things, or you're attracting things to you. So even if you're saying what you don't want, you're still giving that energy. And if you're giving that thing energy, then that's what's still coming towards you. So I was like, so don't say, I want them to stop disrespecting the teacher. And instead, I said, you told me what you want them to stop doing. What do you want them to start doing? Right. Yeah. And so I want them to start listening. I want them to start paying attention. And so I think that goes for us, right? If it's, again, with the money, with the knowledge, with mentorship, oh, I hope they don't tell me no when I go in here and ask for this money.
Yes, well, exactly.
Versus I'm going to get a yes. Mm-hmm. They will be impressed. I have everything together I need to get these finances, or my name is in rooms that I'm not in. People are remembering me when I'm not there. I'm making positive impressions. And so I've really been leading into a lot of the I ams of any of those positive things, right? So I am successful, not I will be, right? Mm-hmm. My business is doing this, current tense. And so I think that mindset is important. So as we're building businesses and building lives and relationships, to be careful of what we're allowing other people to say, right? Mm-hmm. About us. Because, for me, everything turns into a learning opportunity. Let my son tell it. But, the truth is. And so if in that moment it's, oh, well, you don't want this. And then, in that moment to say, well, cousin, well, friend, well, bestie, what do I want? Mm-hmm. Versus what I don't want. Let's talk about what we do want, what the possibilities are on the positive side. And I think drawing that energy in can really make a difference in your own mindset when you're intentional, how you even allow them to talk to you or about you. And I think that can really start shifting how hopeful we are and how we keep going, especially when it gets hard. When it's absolutely. Oh, feast or famine. What day is it? What month is it? But you know what? Let me say this, Jesse. What I could even change right then is, instead of saying feast or famine, I could start saying, is it feast or feast this month? And eliminate famine altogether, because I'm almost looking for, is it going to be a peak or a valley? Well, which peak will I be on today? Or this week or this month. So some of the small everyday things I think that we say to ourselves, oh, you're danged if you do. And some people don't say that. Danged if you do, danged if you don't. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. If it's not one thing, it's another. When it rains, it pours. We say all of those things. And so, the challenge, for me regularly, the challenge for those listening, for you, is how can I catch myself in the moment when I'm saying that about me, about my business, about my family, about my life, and switch up the options that I'm looking at or looking for, and switch up what I'm drawing toward me. How about I'm
Mhm.
blessed if I do, I'm blessed if I don't. So
So
either side of the decision. Go ahead, Jesse.
knowing, so understanding how to reorient yourself to the benefits and changing that mindset is
Mm-hmm.
one thing. But how then do you know when it's time to maybe pivot or look
Mm-hmm.
for other opportunities?
Mm-hmm. No one to hold
You
them,
have
no one to
that.
fold them, huh? Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean necessarily, shutting down the business. It could
Right.
be, we're
Mm-hmm.
finding other opportunities to support our business while we're building
Yes.
the business,
Yes.
or we're doing subcontract work for somebody else
Mm-hmm.
while we're building our business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you think are sort of what do people need to realize about, when it's too much, when you don't have the cash flow, when it's
Mm-hmm.
a strain on your life in all
Mm-hmm.
sense of the word, to then look for other opportunities that can then support them in the long run.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Um, so we're talking about, and the way I like to say it is the power of the pivot. And so, even if we look to, people who did and who didn't, Toys R Us didn't pivot, or, Blockbuster, they didn't pivot.
Mm-hmm.
Netflix has pivoted. And so, if we even look at the example of if Netflix started where they were sending DVDs in the mail, right? Like you paid a subscription, you get DVDs in the mail, and then saw, okay, what I'm doing is becoming obsolete or I'm not making as much money, then I think for us, it's looking at what are those trends? What are technologies? What's happening in the industry, whatever industry I'm in? I've been studying and looking into some futurist thinking as of late. And so, one book that I'll suggest or recommend, the book called Imaginable by Jane McGonigal, I think helps with that mindset. But the idea of looking ahead. And so, with our own business, like you just said, is there a strain? Is there, am I not be healthy mentally? Have I sacrificed, or, is my family kind of in shambles while I'm trying to do this? And so, I think life is speaking. And so, we do need to stop and have times of evaluation,
Mm-hmm.
to where, because John Maxwell said this, experience is not the best teacher. I give John Maxwell credit. I'll say that because he's where I heard it. Experience is not the best teacher. Evaluated experience is. And so then what we have to do then with our businesses is evaluate the experience. And so I am in a constant state of assessment, even as I've joined professional organizations or, gone to things to where I look and it's like, is this worth it? So am I getting value here? And if not, do I want to keep investing time and energy, or do I need to pivot? Do I need to switch? Do I need to reinvest elsewhere? And so I think what's important is to develop this mentality and habit of ongoing evaluation, right? And not just keep going and keep going and keep going. And so, for each of us, it may be different based on our business, like stopping and determining, is it like once a week where I build in that evaluation time of what worked, what didn't work? Do I need to change? How much more time will I give this? And that's where also those friend tours come in, or mentors, and where we're asking and seeking feedback. And so one of the things I think is important is not just to be open to feedback, because that leaves the ownership on somebody else to come to you, but
Mm-hmm.
to seek feedback, from mentors or people who are in the industry, kind of again watching trends, what may be new. If all of my money is gone or there is none coming in, and I am thinking positive and I'm doing my affirmations, right? And of course, then I'm like, okay, bank account still says it's going to be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on today. Then the pivot is, how can my skill set or the product that I have be used in a different way? Can I repurpose it to be used? Going back to Netflix, if we are in entertainment, right, and we want people to be able to get movies, and there's not, where's a DVD player? right? How many people still have those or are using those? Then how do we pivot? But we're still true to what we do. The way we do it may be different. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think if mental health feels like a concern or stress levels seem to be getting high, or through seeking feedback, someone brings up something, don't discount them and say they're just wrong. You just don't see the vision. Maybe sometimes they are seeing something that you don't see or you miss because of a blind spot, because of love, because of passion. And so at least be willing to have conversations, right? Not entertain negativity. I wouldn't say that. But if there's a conversation about where are we, thoughts, um, then how can what I do be used elsewhere? You mentioned, for example, with training. If it's okay, training is my lane and that's what I want to do, and I want to do this for Fruitful Training Group. And while I am building that, are there other places that that same skill set can be used? Well, you know what? There are conferences that happen several times a month where people need speakers, right? And so instead of just saying it's only training for me, I'm using my voice to educate others. Am I going to pivot and do that now in a different way, right? And so maybe that's now looking for speaking opportunities with conferences. Maybe it's starting local with business organizations who need speakers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll share a quick personal testimonial of that. I did a free event for, and this has happened a couple of times. And for me, with Fruitful, I want things to be fruitful, right? But I did a free event because it's like a person or an organization, they could not pay for something. And so they just wanted a speaker to come in like on a Wednesday night to talk about something. And so I did that. And it turns out that probably 2 to 3 months later, right? So that was a seed planted. 2 to 3 months later, a person who was in the audience who had my email reached out and said, I have a friend who works somewhere that's looking for training, and I thought of you. Can I connect you to that person? And that turned into a paying customer. So that free thing turned into a paid thing. And so the idea to bring that back is, if I'm looking at how can whatever skill or product I have be used in a different way, and can I pivot there while I'm still working on this, then maybe I can try a different way or approaching it from a different perspective. And that could turn into, that turns into something as well, because me deciding to do something free in a different way, just showing up at a business organization to be a speaker. Mm-hmm. So figuring out maybe ways that we can deposit, giving samples, allowing people to see or have access to something for free, because you have to kind of build that capital. I think that relational capital, or where people trust you or think that you're competent in something too, or your product is good enough, right? And so figuring out how do I switch up, go into different environments, partner with different people. Maybe you work as a subcontractor, while you're building your own, or so I think being open to all of the things and not being so strong-willed is the word I'll pick. Just to say, I'm going down with this ship. And it's like, well, yeah. How about the ship not go down? How about we work towards patching it up different kinds of ways? Yeah. I'm giving long answers. You got me monologuing again, Jesse, but hopefully there were a few nuggets in there to kind of help. And so again, if I'm tunnel vision on this business, am I looking left or right? Am I zooming out? Am I bringing in a different set of eyes? And then figuring out where else can I add value? And even if that's what I'm in, how can what I do add value somewhere than where I currently am? And I think that mindset and going after those things opens up the doors for the pivot to be profitable.
I think that's something that you shared is valid and important for people to understand about a pivot, is that you're not, you're using the same skill sets in a different capacity. If you have the capacity, if you have the ability to teach and be in front of an audience, why not try being a speaker? If you have the ability to, work online and, do some technical know-how, I find that a lot of people especially, I would say sometimes I forget how technological some people are not. And so, being able to sort of assist them in that way, could that be something that you can try or that you do? A lot of companies, especially those that are like mom and pop shops, are not great at social media or marketing, or they have a physical location, and so is there an opportunity for you to lend services in a different capacity? Not every I actually had a conversation earlier of somebody who was like very worried about their brand and should they take this opportunity because maybe it'll confuse another buyer. And I told him, I said, not everyone needs to know your entire work history. You are the teller of the narrative. And
Yeah.
so not everyone needs to know that, I worked at Del Taco while
Yeah.
I was
Yes.
supporting this other thing.
Yeah.
It's okay. I was getting my bills paid and I still got
Yes.
to participate in this other thing that I was working on. And that's
Yeah.
also okay. So making sure that
Absolutely.
we're creating opportunity for us to continue, right, building these businesses.
Yes.
That 0 to 100K is the most difficult for a lot of
Yeah.
these organizations, and making sure that we are building sustainable businesses, right? Because a lot of people say they have a business, but it hasn't made money in 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Something, Jesse, that just came to mind, I think that could help with pivoting, an activity or an exercise that people may be able to try, but I've usually talked about this in the realm of like creative thinking, but pivoting is, in a way, it is creative thinking. So my first thought is about basketball, and then my second one is about this activity that I saw called random starting points. But I thought about, and with basketball, to pivot, the idea, and I'm physically moving when I'm doing it, and maybe somebody out there in basketball land will correct me, but my understanding with a pivot, or even what was that little tool that was called in math class? Was it a protractor? What was the one that
Protractor. Yeah.
that moved? And so the idea is that one foot stays planted when you pivot, right? And so the idea is so you said the same skill set, for example, right? It's the same thing I'm using. I'm pointing it in a different direction, right? And so if a person is playing basketball and they stop and they pivot, one foot is locked, right? And so they're able to kind of turn and move. And so for us, how can we consider that again with the skill set, with the product? And so that's where creativity would come in to be able to pivot, which takes me to the second thing about there's an activity. I want to give the person credit so others can look it up, but it's called Random Starting Points is the name of the activity. And I'm looking it up on my phone because it popped in my mind, but I want to, again, point people in the right direction of the resource when I can find it. But here's the idea, and then I'm looking. The idea is to start, and we can do this right now, Jesse. So like you said, what if I'm a mom and a pop shop or whatever, and I'm trying to figure out how am I going to pivot? We're not making enough money, or enough things are not coming in. And so an activity to do is to look around your space. And so let's do this together really fast, Jesse. So if you kind of look around your space, what is one of the first things that you see anywhere around you?
Water bottle.
Water bottle. And then for me, I saw a little figurine of Black Panther, right? And so how random, right? So it's so random, but what you do is, what is your problem? Like, is it, okay, our mom and pop shop is not getting enough customers? Is it, for me with training, okay, I'm not getting enough clients, I need to build more clients. And so let's say it's a coffee shop and they're like, we're losing money. We opened up and there's these huge giants around. Well, with the random starting point, you literally take that random starting point. And if this works, if you're in a, like maybe you get a group of friends or a cohort or friend tours, mentors together. And with that random starting point, now you figure out, starting from a Black Panther figurine, how do I get more customers into my coffee shop? And
Okay.
so let's go with that. So if it's coffee shop and we got a Black Panther figurine, like what are some things that make you think of?
We could have a movie night.
Okay, so you could host a movie night at the coffee shop,
Yes.
right? And that's something maybe you can advertise or go around, maybe passing out flyers to the local businesses that are around you. Ooh, even with that, you could go to a school because who loves Black Panther? If it would be kids come with parents who have pocketbooks, who would spend money. Maybe that day making sure we have the little hot cocoa or things for kids because it's getting cold outside. So that one thing you just said can generate business into the
Hmm.
coffee shop, right? And so the creative thinking, and again, if the pivot is, I mean, coffee shop, who thinks movie nights at coffee shops? Well, we just did. Why? Only because we saw the Black Panther figurine, right? And so how far can you go with that? Or depending on, again, how many people are in the room, you could come up with lots of ideas. Some could work, some could not. But, using that creativity, because sometimes we do get stuck, right? Like if networking is not working, how does, Black Panther, and even for me, and I'm talking about being in a training group, guess what? There are movie theaters that are parts of large organizations. If I think of Cinemark and AMC, I haven't targeted any of those places as far as clientele, the leadership that goes there. So, maybe I need to visit my local movie theater or figure out how to get access to people who are in leadership in those and see what I can do or offer. Maybe I book something at a movie theater that is free because sometimes you can rent out a movie space, right?
Hmm.
And so now let's keep going, right? And so the idea is whether it's by yourself or with a group, how do we have these random starting point brainstorming sessions to figure out how do we pivot? How do we get more money? How do we increase revenue? What direction? And the end result may have nothing absolutely at all to do with Black Panther because one idea triggers another and then another and another. And then you may come up with something that you think is most viable and it came from a very random starting point. So
Yeah.
it's something that I tried for that.
I liked that. I like that a lot. I think that it's important to sort of evaluate. You said evaluate what is working, what isn't working, and then how do you then look to transfer those skills, just like you would for a job, right?
Absolutely.
How do you transfer the
Absolutely.
skills to then get paid in order to fund that back into your business?
Yeah.
So that's amazing. Thank you for that.
Here's the
Our
name I found. I want to say the name. It was Michael Muxworthy. Michael Muxworthy. MUX worthy. Michael Muxworthy. Um,
for the
is where
random
I
starting
was
point.
out. Yeah, for random starting points when I was doing some research on some creative thinking. So, thanks,
Right.
Michael.
And so here for our last question.
Mhm.
So this being that this is happening, we're having this conversation in October. I'd like for us to think, you mentioned futurist thinking, what the next year sort of has you thinking as you're building your empire. What are the things that you're going to be tackling in 2024,
Mhm.
especially in, changing economic climate aside, because it's always changing.
Mhm.
What are the
Absolutely.
things that you're looking forward to? What are the things that you're strategically aligning yourself to? What are some things that, as you're looking forward to 2024, you're like, this is where a year from now I want to be, and how
Mhm.
can we get there?
Mhm. So I think as far as actions for me, what's happening right now first is saying and writing, and I guess daring to dream big, ridiculous, crazy numbers. So, and then kind of writing those things down. And so, what do I want to make by next year? And of course, we have to create SMART goals, right? So, um, I'm looking forward to, because right now the way my business is set up is as you mentioned before, like, so I do some contract work with others because it's like, okay, I've got a skill set, and as I'm building, how am I using it to support others? And so what I'm looking forward to with hopeful expectation is that Fruitful Training Group is only self-sustaining with just us, and that I'm also creating space for others to be successful, right? And so one of the affirmations that I say is, as I create opportunities for myself, I'm also creating opportunity for other people. And so I mentioned speaking, for example. So that's one of the areas that I'm going to be exploring as far as pivoting. And so there's training, because I guess what Fruitful Training Group does, right, is we go direct with organizations, corporations, nonprofit, government, etc. And we go in and we do professional development directly with those organizations. And so two areas that I'm considering or looking to pivot is, one, again, where else can I use that skill? So in speaking, so looking and at speaking, at more speaking engagements, right? And that may involve travel. It can be virtual conferences, etc. So that's one area for us that we're looking at. And then number two is pivoting into offering a public version of training and seminars, not just the private version. So, again, right now it's it's business to business. And so the pivot of courses that are offered to the public and not just to the private. So again, same skill set, some of the same things that I'm already creating, right? But how do I pivot to, okay, a different audience and draw those people in? So I'm still in my lane. I guess the lane is just widening, if that makes sense. And so it's not such a narrow lane. And so that creates a stretch goal, but not so much stretch in the rubber band that it pops, right? And so now I'm in the process of kind of educating myself. Okay, where do those opportunities lie? Who do I see that's already doing what I want to do, right? And I am a crazy connector on LinkedIn. So following, reaching out, following up with phone calls, and not being salesy with that necessarily. Like, don't you want this? Why don't you buy this from me? But looking, I guess, always with wherever we're pivoting to, I mentioned this earlier, on how to add value. And so the thought I would say, for everybody is, how do we widen the lane where you currently are? Because that allows you a little bit more pivot room if your lane is a little bit wider. And then connecting with people who are already doing that. I think people are willing to answer questions sometimes, maybe especially if it's a one-off and you're not continuously hitting people up, So I plan to connect with more people who are doing what I'm doing, asking questions and continuing to be in the rooms where they are. I'm writing those things down about what I am and have. So all of the things for 24 that I want to accomplish, and so this is still a work in progress, are written in present tense or even in past tense, like it's already been accomplished. I feel like in the book 10X, Grant Cardone talks about that too, like writing them down and kind of looking at goals every morning, every night, but writing them down like I already have it. Cherron, for example, I'm interested in real estate as well. And so, that may not happen in 2024, but per that idea is writing down, I own 50 homes and I'm a landlord. So I'm saying that like I am, like it's right now. And so those things would be written down for 2024 in present, or I have owned or I sold this many homes. And so, yes, how am I widening my lane is what I would encourage us all to do. Like, where do I pivot? Who am I going to connect with that is already doing that? Even if it's just kind of watching them and learning from them from afar. I may not, people don't always answer DMs. So you slide into their DMs and they're like, I don't know. So they may not answer in that regard. And so learning from people from afar, and then getting in the rooms where people are. But what is a big stretch goal? And so have that one big super one that's like, okay, that's pretty much at the end of how far this rubber band can stretch. And what is the one thing that I can do now, today, that makes that possible? What's the one thing I can do this month that makes 2024 possible? What's the one thing I need to do in the next 6 months that makes that possible? So the idea of breaking it down into those bite-sized goals, even if it's just one. If 2024, end of 2024, what's my big goal? What's one thing I need to have done by the end of 2024 to say I accomplished it, and kind of backing it up from the year to the 6 months to the quarter to 2 weeks to the day, back to where we are right now. And so we've heard that a lot, and I say that right now. People, I know that already. And so one of the things that I have challenged myself with is there is I know category, and we could put a bunch of stuff over here. We can put a bunch of stuff in the I know, and then there's the I do category. And now the question becomes, is everything that's over here over here? Is everything things that you're doing? We know to make SMART goals. We know to write them down. We know to think positive. We know to network. So that's not all new, but it's not also things that we're doing. And so choosing how do I close? Because the gap between those two, between knowing and doing, what closes or widens that gap, that's the application gap, is what I call it. Because application of what I know is like, that lines those things up. And so even if pivoting means just starting with what are some things I already know and haven't been doing, and I'm going to start practicing right now, today. Who am I going to connect with that knows it? What are 2 different directions if you challenge yourself with widening the lane? If what I'm doing just right here in this narrow version isn't working, if it's using random starting points or whatever, right? How am I going to choose maybe 2 opportunities to expand or to widen the lane? And so I mentioned a little bit about what those are for me, I think. So I'll be quiet again.
No, thank you so much, Cherron, for this conversation. And I think that for the audience who might be listening in, you said a lot of things, a lot of inspiration, a lot of motivation, and some specific things that people can do, not just to look at where they are, how to evaluate, but I love that widening the lane. I think that is a great way to think of it as you are pivoting, as you are, considering what opportunities to look at and venture into. Not all opportunities are going to be successful, and that's okay.
Yep.
But at least you're making strategic moves in different directions. We don't have to throw everything at the wall and see if it sticks.
Yeah.
We can do it in a strategic way to understand where can we use our skills and how do we build those sustainable skills. So thank you so much, Cherron, for spending this time with us. Any last words?
What I was going to say is, when I was looking into some real estate, and that's still one of the pots that's on the burner, but I think it's important even with that to know when to say yes and when to say no to things, or to say not now. And so to not stretch yourself too thin. So there's some things that I'm interested in, but I realize it's a not now. That doesn't mean it's a never. And so knowing what you're good, what is a yes for you and what's a no for you, and then kind of sticking with that is important. But when I was going to some real estate seminars, and so I still have that information. And the one thing people can never take from you is education, right? Once you've got that, you have the knowledge, then you decide when to apply it. You decide when to close that application gap, right? But at one of those, something that really resonated with me that I'm using even outside of the realm of real estate. And this is a big, scary statement is what I'm going to call it. Is that a BS squared? Wow. Big, scary statement.
You're like branding everywhere.
Or maybe I'm going to say it's a huge, scary statement, because I don't want people to walk away with BS. We want it to be HS squared. There we go. A huge, scary statement. He said, jump and build your wings on the way down. And I was like, wait a minute, just even that visual just feels like what? And so from that, though, what I have taken, for me, I just gleaned the word action from that. So the word that I said, action, because he was like, jump and build your wings on the way down. Don't wait for perfect. Don't wait till you know all of the things about all of the things, because whoever knows all of the things, people who are in school right now that just started college, the things they're learning now will probably be obsolete by the time they graduate, right? And so you won't ever know all of the things. Start taking action. Do something. Get
Yeah.
out, go to the meeting, right? Take the class. There are free resources, for example, like edX. edX is a website that has lots of free courses where you can learn all kinds of things. And so go and do is what I would say. And when you're trying to figure out how to pivot, I believe, again, as a person of faith, and I'll close with this. There was a song I listened to. So there was an artist, her name was Yolanda Adams. And there's a song that I liked. So she's a gospel recording artist. And one line from one song, she said, "Move ahead in faith and patiently await the answer." Move ahead in faith and patiently await the answer. And in my mind, I'm like, you know what? I feel like many people do it in the opposite direction. Like we wait for the answer and then move ahead. But then is that really faith? Right. And so for me, it's been think about it, right? Evaluate, make sure that it, makes sense to the extent of information I can get. And then I'm going to move. And John Maxwell talks about don't get so caught up in decision making. Yes, we have to do decision making and we want to work on those skills, but also work on your decision management skills. As if I move ahead and realize that this pivot isn't the right pivot, although I tried and calculated, how do I manage that decision so that it still works in my favor? But all of that still requires movement and action to begin with. Yeah. So you got to make the decision, move on the decision, and then manage the decision that you made.
Well, thank you so much, Cherron, for all of this. And with that, we will see you next time.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much to all of you for allowing me to be here.